This is the School Success Podcast, a podcast for school leaders to learn from other school leaders what's working and what's not, and to get inspiration and encouragement, as well as strategies to grow school enrollment, connect with families, retain teachers, recruit teachers, and everything in between. You guys are heroes, and I cannot thank you enough for pouring into this next generation that's coming behind us. My goal is you will take at least one thing away from every episode that you can take back to your school to make it better than it is right now. Please enjoy the School Success Podcast.
Time for school.
This episode is brought to you by our friends over at America's Christian Credit Union. This year, they're celebrating 65 years of service, and they're a credit union that specifically provides essential school banking services and an amazing tuition financing program for schools to reduce risk and administrative burden. You can check them out online, americaschristianccu.com/schools. That's americaschristianccu.com/schools. They are amazing. You need to go check them out. And now, enjoy today's episode. Hey, school success makers. Welcome to another edition of the School Success Podcast. I'm your host, Mitchell Slater. I'm joined by a new friend out of Jackson, Tennessee, Tom Hughes, and he works with a great association called the Association of Christian Schools International, and he is the field director of the Eastern Division, so he's over multiple states, which he can dive into in a little bit. But him and I have chatted already a little bit earlier this week. I'm excited for this interview. He's got just a ton of knowledge in Christian education, and he'll be diving into all that here in just a little bit. But before we do that, I do want to highlight our amazing sponsors over at America's Christian Credit Union. Obviously, if you guys have listened to the last few episodes, you've heard the spiel, but obviously tune in because they're a great organization. They're celebrating 65 years of service this year, and they've been providing essential school banking services and tuition financing programs for schools looking to reduce their risk and administrative burden. So what's really cool is obviously Christian schools, they're collecting tuition from families. But if you're one of the schools out there that has a hard time chasing families, or you're always following up and calling these families because maybe they're not paying on time, and at the end of the year, maybe you're only collecting 95% of the tuition that you really should be collecting, where you're leaving money on the table, and that is not on you guys to be able to have that burden. So what you can do is work with America's Christian Credit Union. They offer tuition financing programs for your families so that they can take out a loan to be able to go and to your school, but you get the money up front, and then they work with America's Christian Credit Union throughout the year. It's a win-win for everybody involved. So I encourage you to go check them out if that's something that you need. You can find them at americaschristianccu.com/schools. That's americaschristianccu.com/schools. Well, as we dive into today's episode, I'm going to pass it off to Tom to introduce himself quickly, and then we will dive into the nitty-gritty of today. So, Tom, welcome to the podcast today.
Well, welcome, Mitchell, and thank you for this opportunity. It's exciting, and I appreciate you and all you're doing, and thank you so much.
Man, I'm stoked, man. Well, I always like to ask when we start the episode, all the listeners are probably used to this one, but if I was to visit you in Jackson, Tennessee, what would you say, Mitchell, you got to do this to really experience Jackson, Tennessee?
Well, first of all, if you come to Jackson, Tennessee, you've got to have real barbecue, and not the fake stuff, but the real pulled barbecue that you can get all over this place. And I could take you to this little place in Mason, Tennessee, outside Jackson, and the name of the place is Bozo's. And it's old school stools. I mean, people packed in there, and it just is unbelievable. But Jackson is a unique town. We're right there on Interstate 40. We're just an hour from Memphis. So anything you want to do with Beale Street, and anything you want to do with the culture, if you want to go to Graceland and see Elvis's home, you can go there. We're 2 hours from Nashville. So if you want to go to Nashville for all the country music, and if you're into hockey, you can go see the Predators. If you're into football, you see the Titans. So it's strategically located. It's a great place to be, right? Like I said, right there on the interstate, and it is growing rapidly, like most places. But this area is just exploding. So, good place to be.
Love it. Well, I've had guests on before. They've talked about barbecue, and obviously there's there's some friendly arguments that will happen there because I love barbecue. I have a smoker, so I love to smoke good brisket and have some of that good old grub. But I married into a North Carolina family, so I suddenly learned about this thing called vinegar barbecue, and I was like, "You're putting what on barbecue?" And she's like, "Oh, we're putting vinegar." And I was like, "No, like that's not what you use vinegar for." So I'm not actually a fan of vinegar barbecue. I'm a fan of like Tennessee, Texas,
Right.
like so. What would you, if you were to describe Tennessee barbecue for those that are listening who don't understand or maybe are out of the country, like what is genuine Tennessee
Well, I
barbecue?
tell you what, and I grew up in Baltimore, so our barbecue is completely different than here in the South where my wife's from. It's just pulled. I mean, if you just can pull it off the animal, and it's smoked, and the sauce, it's just, and you got to get messy when you eat it. You got to get grubby. So if you got real nice clothes, don't worry about that. But it's just really a unique, specific flavor that's very. It's unique. It's tasty. It's good.
I
It's
would
got to
agree with
drip
you.
off your
I would,
face, if you're eating the ribs and so forth. So
come on, man. It's in the morning right now. I'm not ready to eat yet. Come on. Well, as we dive into the episode, I would love for you to give the listeners a background on where you got to today. I know you're obviously working at the association, but you have a very vast background in Christian education. So just kind of giving people just a quick rundown of like how you got to where you are today, please.
well, okay, that's an interesting story. And as I told you the other day, it's not a journey that I even planned or thought about, or it was not even on my radar. Teaching, coaching, getting into administration, yes. But getting to a Christian school, it was foreign. Growing up in Baltimore, I knew there was public schools. I knew there was a lot of good independent schools, and I was blessed to be able to go to one. There was parochial schools, Jewish schools, but I never heard of a Christian school. Now that's ignorance on my part, okay? But I didn't know what a Christian school was, and so when I got into teaching and coaching, I started off in the public sector. Then I had moved into the independent school world, and it was an interesting story. I was at a very good independent school, and some people from a Christian school that was growing and developing approached me about how we're doing our athletic program, our co-curricular activities, because this school was growing. So we're meeting, and I found out they had another agenda. They said, "Hey, let me tell you what we're doing." Of course, I already knew what they were doing because they went through the eighth grade, and then their students, a lot of their students, would then matriculate to our school. Well, next thing you know, they said, "Would you consider praying about talking to us about being a high school principal?" I thought that was really interesting. Instead of saying, "Hey, our school's growing, our headmaster can't do it all, we need a high school principal. Hey, would you talk to us?" They said, "Would you consider praying about it?" And that part resonated with me like, hmm. And then I don't know if this is right or not, but my first reaction was, no, I'm not a preacher. I don't walk around with a Bible all the time. I don't, that was, again, ignorance on my part. And they laughed, said, "Come see what we're doing." Well, when I looked at what they were doing, and then I remembered the students who left there that came to our school, it was academics and the spiritual development. It wasn't an either. It was developing that total child, that holistic, that the body, the mind, the heart. And we talk about gifts. Well, the mind's a gift. And so they were developing that. So next thing I know, I move into Christian schooling. There we got this double wide out in West Little Rock on 30 some acres. And I go, what am I doing in this double wide? And they were building elementary, and the school grew and grew, and we became a place where people were saying, we want biblical integration, we want the Christian environment, but we also want academics. And we were doing that. And so that grew, and then the opportunity arose to go head of school. I was ready to be a head of a school. And that developed going to Alabama. And then the opportunity came to head another school in Pennsylvania. So moved to Pennsylvania. So I've got, I think about 21 years in Christian schooling. And then the rest of it, the other 20 some is in public education, and then independent school world. But again, Mitchell, it really is nothing that I even planned on or thought about. It's like anything else. You turn it over to the Lord, get out of the way, and He's going to open up the doors and He's going to lead you. And you're going to have questions like, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" And you go, "Yeah, I'm sure." The question is, "Are you sure?" And so that's how I got to where I am. And then when we moved back here to Tennessee, opportunity here to continue in Christian schooling. And then next thing you know, an opportunity to be a field director for ACSI. And what that means is, ACSI serves about 5.5 million students across the world. And there's, I think, 2,200 schools in America, Christian schools affiliated with ACSI. And they divided up the country into central, western, and eastern. Well, the eastern director, Chuck Gillum in Georgia, has schools from Maine all the way down to Florida. And so that's a lot of schools. That's 900 plus schools. And that's a lot of schools. And even across the country, there's a lot of Christian schools that are different areas. So field directors are people who can be one who keeps up with the schools that they're assigned, be an advisor, a counselor, offer any kind of wisdom when available, direct the head of school to ACSI people or ACSI people, hey, contact so-and-so at this school. So just to help them, because their hands are full leading the school. So it's an opportunity to do that. And so I serve portions of Tennessee. In other words, I have schools from Nashville over to Memphis, and then down into Alabama, down towards as far as Mobile, and down into Mississippi as far as Jackson, Mississippi. And so I've served that area right there. And it's been a real joy. It's been a pleasure doing that. It's giving back. As I told you the other day, I feel like I'm in the mission field. It's, so much was given to me. So many people were out there helping me when I was leading a school. So many ways to seek advice, someone to talk to, like, is this a big deal? Is this not a big deal? Or am I going in the right direction? And so you're more of a mentor, not telling them what to do, but just kind of mentoring them and coming alongside. So that's my journey here. I'm also involved in the Leadership U, which is a part of ACSI, and that's for emerging leaders. And what that means is those who have a potential someday to be a head of a school, they're in this program. It's approximately 14 months. A component of that program is each one has a mentor. So for the last several years, I've been mentoring different people that are in this program, and that's been exciting too.
Love it. Love it. Well, your background is amazing. And obviously those school leaders that are listening, I know can learn a lot from you. So if we kind of dove into the three main questions that we go into is like challenges. So the schools you're working with, even back when you were the head of school and working in Christian education, what are some of those main challenges you see schools currently up against? But do you have any suggestions on how to combat those challenges that you continue to see come up in Christian schools?
Well, Mitchell, I think the challenges that schools are facing now pretty much are the same we have faced for years, right before 2008, and the depression, not the depression, but recession hit. I think that the major problem, major concerns, major challenges are growth, finances, and the ever-changing culture. And with growth, the challenges now are Christian schools are growing across the country. I'm seeing that in my area. A lot of Christian schools are growing. Some of it coming out of the pandemic situation. A lot of it is the culture, what's happening, and people are saying, okay, I'm looking for something better and more unique for my child. So growth is exciting, but growth brings challenges. You want to make sure you don't want to be, as a Christian school leader, I didn't want my school to be a country club. I didn't want to be, you can't come here. But I also wanted to be, here's what we stand for. Here's what we're all about. This is the mission of our school. Does this align with you as a parent? What are you looking for as a parent? And be able to sit down and have those open discussions with families, because obviously a lot of them are coming to what we do because they've been a product of a Christian school. There's a lot of them coming to is, I am leaving where I am. I'm coming to something new. And they don't have a real, true, deep understanding of what Christian schools are all about. I know ACSI is doing a great job. If you go to the website, there's a place for parents to educate parents. So growth is important. Growth is a challenge. Again, you want people who are mission appropriate. And with that growth, then comes facilities. Do I have enough room? What do I do? How do I handle the students? How do I make the adjustments? Do I have the land? Do the resource? So all those come into the growth, and it also is an opportunity for schools to be thinking forward. Now, I'm not saying they don't, but sometimes thinking further down the road. Okay, we hadn't thought about building, or how do I meet the needs? So growth is one big issue. Finances. We are a school/business. We got to finance this operation. We got to provide you, the father of your children, the proposition value. In other words, what are you going to get beyond you're giving me money, tuition? What am I going to give you in turn? How is the school going to benefit you? How's the school going to really benefit the community? How do we complement our community, where some people think we're just trying to flee it? No, we're in the community. We want to be, as in Matthew, that we want to be the light on the hill. And so you got to have the finances. Alan Pugh wrote a great book on sustaining, his name is Rethinking Sustainability. That's it. And he made a statement there that is very, very thought-provoking. It's hard for us to make schools affordable. We want to make it accessible. And there's a difference. And he goes in explaining what that means. And so how do we make our schools accessible to people? More and more families last several years and even now are applying for financial aid and qualifying. And what I mean is sometimes we had a lot of families would apply, but they didn't qualify. More and more are qualifying. How do you meet the needs of those people? From a parent's perspective, you're looking at a school and you hear all about it and you go, man, I don't know if I can afford that. That could be cost prohibitive. But then you turn around and go, how can I afford not to send my child there? What decisions do I have to make? So finances, not only for the school, but finances for the families. And then the ever-changing culture that has always taken place, and it's increased. There are things being told and taught and pushed that parents are going, you were talking a little while ago about age appropriateness for things. Well, there's things that you want elementary kids to learn, but when you go up to middle school and high school, it goes up a several level. So the ever-changing culture. Now, let me really stress that I believe in, and a lot of Christian school leaders, is we're not a refuge from the world. We're not trying to escape it. We're trying to teach from a biblically based perspective. We're trying to teach the values. I read where was it Booker T. Washington was saying, he was saying things like, it's things are true, things are right, things are wrong, because they are, not because the majority thinks that way. And so when you go back to the scriptures to learn this is true, this is right, this is wrong, not because Tom Hughes said it, it's because we're founded on biblical principles. So with the culture, we want our kids to be able to learn. We're not going to keep things from them, but we want to put it in a biblical perspective. We want to be able to have that freedom to go into, in whether it's in literature classes, whether it's history, and they talk about this, in science, let's talk about that. We want them to understand, because I think one of the biggest, one of the ways we can not fulfill our mission and not be helpful to our graduates is if they go off to college and they hear something, this ism or that ism, and they go, I don't even know what they're talking about. And then the thing is, not only does that confuse them, but then it could set the mindset of, I wonder what else they kept from us. So in a Christian school, we can go into it and we can teach them and we can put it in a biblical Christ-centered perspective and educate them. So when they go out into the world, they're able to stand on their own 2 feet. Or if they don't know the answer, all of a sudden they go, something's resonating. I can go back to look or go back to talk to somebody. So the ever-changing culture, we want things that are age appropriate. We want things that are biblically based and Christ-centered. And then we want to send them out. The great story, real quick, Wheaton College, when my son graduated from there, the president got up there and said, okay, you're all ready to leave the Wheaton bubble. And everybody kind of laughed, blah, 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 like, oh, the Wheaton bubble. And some people think our Christian kids are in a bubble. And he goes, but honestly, what did we keep from you? We didn't keep anything from you. We were like the cadets at West Point. We kept everything out so we could prepare you. They keep everything out so they can prepare the cadets. Then they send the cadets out to the real world, to real battles, to fight those battles. And that's how I see we want to do is then when they go out into the culture that they're in, we want them to be able to stand on their feet and have the wisdom and the knowledge to stand for their own. So those are the big issues that I see that, again, they've always been challenges, but they're really predominant right now. And the other one more thing, the changing of the number of percentage of families that go to church and participate, that has dwindled. So you got a group of parents that are coming to us. So how do you handle that? How do you educate them, whether you're a covenant school or whether you're a mission appropriate or whatever, or evangelical? So again, all those things are changing with the dynamics. But good school leaders have a team, and they think about that, they address it, and they say, okay, let's sit down, let's have a plan, and let's move forward. So.
Yeah, and I agree. Those are challenges, like preparing these kids and making sure they're ready for what they're about to see. And I love the story from Wheaton College about how you can't keep everything from them because they do need to be prepared. I think about, obviously in the early days of fatherhood, I got a 3-year-old, but it's, we let him fail, obviously not going to let him get crazy hurt or anything, but like if he's struggling to get something open, I'm like, let him keep trying. This morning we were making breakfast and he was getting dressed and he was just like, can you help me? And I was like, no, let me see if you can do it. Cause I know he can, it's like letting him fail. And he put his shirt on backwards. And I was like, I think the tag's on backwards. So it's like letting him fail, letting him learn, because he's got to, obviously, this is very, very elementary, but he's got to get ready for the real world, of course. And it's my job as his father to get him ready for that. But I feel like there's a huge responsibility on the schools to be doing the same thing. Not everything, because I do believe that falls back, of course, onto the families and the parents to do that. But the school does have a huge responsibility to prepare these students for what's ahead. And I do believe that's a huge challenge and a huge weight that's on the shoulders of schools and teachers and head of schools. So I hope anybody that's listening, they don't take that lightly. I think you guys are in education because of that. You're up for that challenge. You love students and you want to pour into them and invest in them for the future. So I don't think any of you guys are just doing I guess I'll just be a teacher. I don't think there's probably many people that are like that. You guys are doing that because you love them, and that is a challenge. And so I encourage all of you teachers, all the head of schools listening, I got your back and behind you, because it's a lot. It's a lot what you guys are up against.
And Mitchell, partner with the family. Parents are so critical. You've got to be available to your parents, and you've got to listen to them, because it's a partnership. It's the home, it's the church, and it's a school, and we have to be in partnership, and you've got to be open. Another thing that just came to my mind, I had a situation one time in a worldview class, and the kid went home. In a world class, a topic came up, and the mother called me, and she was not happy with the topic that came up. And she goes, well, we all go to a certain church. And I said, yeah, but we're not affiliated with that church. Well, we believe this. I said, great. I'm glad you do. We're not challenging that. And so we went on, and I said, how did you find out about what was going on? She goes, well, my son came home and told me. I said, great. He's supposed to, because we're teaching. And said, now go home to your family. What do we think about this? What's our position here? What do we think about? And he did exactly what he was supposed to do. Go home and discuss with his parent. And then I finally said, do you even know how that subject came up in class? She goes, no, it was taught. He goes, no, one of the students asked about it. So the teacher took the teachable moment to educate him what this was, and then now go home to your family and talk about it. And now this was a senior class. But the point was, instead of saying, oh, no, we Here's what the scriptures say. Now go home and talk about it. So
Yeah, that's
yeah.
good. We talked about challenges. Let's talk about what's going really good. What do you see in schools kicking butt at and doing really, really well in right now?
Well, again, the schools are meeting these needs. They're looking at how they can increase their enrollment, responsibly, how they can make sure they get mission appropriate families, students and families. They're looking at their facilities and how can they expand if they can expand. They're making plans. They're dealing with the issue instead of just saying, well, we're gonna cut it off here and that's it. Now, some schools are saying we're taking X number of students right now, but I do know that they're looking ahead in the future. How can we expand programs that are being offered? I know there's a lot of schools are doing like mission trips either to Mexico or to Europe. I even heard of one really unique. They went out to the Navajo reservation and to out there, and it was just a tremendous experience for the students at the school to go out there. So a lot of schools are not only making sure they have the academics and they are preparing their kids, but they're how can we serve the community? How can we serve the area beyond our borders? How can we? One school has a great term for it. They have week without walls, where they're doing their different various experiential programs and meeting the needs of other people. So it's kind of neat to see what schools are doing. Schools are also looking at their co-curricular activities. What can they add that's going to meet the demands, the needs, the requests of families? Are they able to do that? So all of that is exciting to see what happens with Christian schools into offering a broad, the holistic approach, the body, the mind, the heart, the soul of each child. So it's exciting to see what they're doing. And in my area, Mitchell, it's really kind of, in the schools that I have seen and talked to, boy, they range from small schools to schools that are close to 1,000 students, but every one of them, their heart for the Lord, what they want to do for their children, how they want to serve the community, is the passion that they have for Christian schooling is amazing. It really is.
Awesome. Have you seen any specific stories from the schools that you've worked with, or even maybe just past ones you worked at, like things that they were doing for like teacher retention and recruitment? Anything specific there? I'm kind of throwing some curveballs to you, but like anything you saw, like, man, that was a really good idea. Actually, I never thought about doing that, and it was working for them.
Well, one of the things that is being pushed through ACSI in a lot of schools is professional development, finding ways to get the teachers the professional development they need, either going to a workshop, providing through the internet, ways to educate and improve them and value them. Because what you have to avoid, a danger in any school, but could be Christian schools especially, is to say, well, this is good enough. We're doing a good job. Well, you're probably doing a good job for right now, but we can always get better. And change is inevitable, but you're not going to change just for the sake of changing. So why are we going to change? What is the need? And then to help those teachers to figure out ways and see ways to improve. So I think the increase of sending teachers, making it accessible for them to go to meaningful workshops or conferences is extremely important. And that values the teacher. And then any way we can help them as far as, if you can reduce class sizes, and I know you try to keep the classes small as possible, but any way we can do that financially. And I think the biggest thing that I'm seeing with administrators is listening to them, letting them know, hey, I do want to hear you, and I hear what you're saying, and I'm just not going to say, well, we can't afford it, it's not in the budget. It is to listen to them and let them know they're part of the program, and they are important. You talk about leaders of the school. Well, everybody thinks it's the head of school. Well, yes and no. Every one of those teachers is a leader. What goes on in that classroom, they're leading those kids. So if you can if you can listen to your teachers and listen to hear what they're really saying, and to be able to say, I hear what you're saying. That's a great idea. We're going to look to see if we can do it. You obviously know finances are an issue. Be open with them. Be real with them. You don't have to give them all the data, but be able to let them know that it's a program that we would love to implement, or there's a way we'd love to help you. So any way we can do to help the teachers feel that they're a part of the decision-making process. Just kind of like you as a father, and with your children, involve them in decisions. Now, dad and mom have to make the final decision, but at least they can't say, well, we didn't even know what the process was. We didn't even hear what was going on. Yes, you were involved in the process. So I think that's the biggest thing is engaging the teachers and having their input, because they're down in the trenches. And we as administrators pretty much know a lot what's going on, but there's sometimes we don't really know or have not heard that before, or wow, that's new to me. Some people think we know everything, and there are sometimes we know more than they think we know. But I just think that partnership with the faculty is so critical.
I love the part you shared about the personal development. I was talking to a school a few months back. They were actually a guest on the podcast. I think they might have shared it on the actual recorded part, or it might have been later we were talking, but he said they set aside a budget every year for each teacher to have, I think it was $1,000 or maybe $2,000 that is used for personal development of their choosing. So if they want to use it to go to a mindfulness retreat, they can go to a mindfulness retreat. If they want to go to, he said one person goes to Mexico every year to just get away and relax and like pour into the self, like to just get refreshed. He's like, it's kind of set aside for like, hey, you use this to make yourself refreshed and rebuilt. If it's a massage, go get a massage. And I was like, well, I have not heard of school intentionally set aside budget for that. Now I know there's probably schools listening going, well, there's no way we could do that. Maybe it starts with, hey, we're going to set aside $100 per teacher every year that they can use for something. Maybe it is a massage, or maybe it is something they can give back. But I thought that was cool. They intentionally were setting aside budget for that. And then the other piece you just mentioned, like choices, because it reminded me of because you brought it back to the fatherhood level. Is like what we do with our son Milo is we'll give him typically two choices with something we give him. I'm not saying like you're going to maybe do this with your teachers, but we'll say, well, Milo, you have two choices. Do you want this cereal or this cereal? Do you want to go play outside? Or do you want to play inside? So he feels like he's a part of the actual decision and he is, but we're giving him two choices. So we stay, in the same confines of what we're trying to get him to do, but we're like, here's two choices. And maybe that applies to students at your school, or also your teachers going, hey, do you guys think we should have, pizza at the party, or should we have pasta or whatever? I don't know if that would help, but it was just an idea that popped in my head.
Well, again, the professional development, when we as the leaders treat the teachers as true professionals and we value them, and they come to understand that professional development is expected, continue to read. Schools can provide so much, but then teachers have to take that on. And I know they're limited as far as time. Their hands are full with students, the different personalities of students, the grading and keeping up. But when they're encouraged and they understand this is expected of me, and we're going to help you out as much as we can. And if they can see each year that in 2 years that has increased, there's more opportunities. It lets them know we're all in this together. Teachers know what the tuition is. Teachers know that there's limited resources. It's not like the public sector. But when we can do all we can to help them, because they're our resource. They're the key of what's going on. They're down in the trenches. They're the ones who a science teacher. We talk about biblical integration. High school science teacher, and I just stopped in one day, just popped in, and they were doing the Newton's cradle with the balls, and they swing and hit, and they were doing that and talk about it. And he said, "How's this work?" And the kids gave a big answer. He goes, "No, how does it really work?" And he made them think deep. And then he goes, and he tied this in. He goes, "When I was an elementary kid, we read this Bible verse, and this is what I understood. Then as I got older in middle school and high school, I read it again, and I saw something deeper and deeper. And then when I got to adulthood and read it, I saw much deeper and deeper." So there's a teacher who's teaching science, and he's outstanding. but then that opportunity, he was in. Sometimes we have to be intentional in the biblical integration, but that's spontaneous to connect the two. And I thought that was just why. And he didn't do, and I know he didn't do that because I was in there. That was just him, and he tied that in.
Hmm.
So that's pretty neat. That's what you can do as a Christian school teacher, to go in there, roll up the sleeves, and get into that math and that science and that English. But then you're always those teachable moments, and then the intentional moments.
That's a perfect segue into my last
Okay.
question, Tom. So, like, what piece of advice, man? So, if you've been in this a long time, so if you had to share one piece of advice with the school leaders listening, what would you say it would be?
I would say stay the course. In other words, always remember what the mission of your school is. Memorize it. Even get your faculty, require them somehow, memorize the mission of the school. Because there's going to be a lot of good ideas that are out there. They're going to come to you, and you're going to want to grow your school and expand it. But if it doesn't match the mission of your school, you've got to be able to say, that's a good program, but it's not who we are. And then explain to them. But you can't. Sometimes you can sort of, next thing you know, you're drifting. You need money. You need this. You need that. Here's a good program. Well, it's not that big a deal. No, if it doesn't match who we are, and it's like that frog in the water. It gets hotter and hotter. Doesn't even realize it. So I would encourage all school heads to stay the course, know the mission of school, make sure everybody else knows it, and then finally, some things that are big aren't really that big. The sun will come up tomorrow. It'll be a new day. It'll be hairy for a while. It'll be rough, but it won't last. And stay in the Word, and don't lose confidence in yourself. So
yeah, I love it. Amen, man. Well, Tom, I love our time together, man. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to record with us. And I love all your years of service in Christian education and following the Lord's calling on your life. And I love that you're in a position now to pour into a whole bunch of other schools who are needing just guidance, direction, somebody to be able to bounce questions off of. So keep doing what you're doing, man. And really thank you again for your time today, man.
Thank you, Mitchell. I appreciate it. God bless.
Well, another huge shout out and a thank you to Tom for taking time and being on the podcast today. I love what he's doing in Christian education, and for all his years of service, he's got a ton of knowledge. And again, I'm hoping you're able to take at least one thing away from today's episode that you can take back to your school to make it better than it is right now. Now, maybe your school listening, and you're struggling with a couple things as the fall is quickly approaching, even though we just finished the school year recently. But if you're struggling with enrollment growth, we'd love to talk with you and help you to fix that problem so you are at capacity come fall time. You can check out our main website, schoolsuccessmakers.com. Fill out a form so we can get in touch with you, but schoolsuccessmakers.com, go check that out. Or if you're just looking to get connected with some like-minded individuals, please check out our private Facebook group just for school leaders called School Success Makers. That's School Success Makers, which is a private Facebook group on Facebook, of course. And I am personally in there, would love to personally see you in there as well, get to know you and your school. We have some cool things that we're launching and in the process of launching, and some of them already launched. But one of the things is our School Success Report, which is our weekly newsletter that's launching. And you can find that on our main website that I just mentioned a little bit ago, schoolsuccessmakers.com. So go check that out as well. And if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, ideas, please let us know those as well. And if you're loving the episodes, you're loving what we're doing here, it does take a lot of time and resources to put these out. We'd love a 5-star review from you from wherever you're listening to podcasts. So it encourages us and helps us to make more content just for you. If you know anybody that we should interview for the podcast, please let us know that as well by going to our website, letting us know, hey, you need to interview this person, or tag me on Facebook or Instagram. My personal one is Mitchell R. Slater. If you want to tag me, be like, hey, Mitchell, you need to interview this person, and I would love to check them out. All right, I think that's it for this week's episode. We'll see you guys here next week with another amazing episode as usual on the School Success Podcast. We'll see you then.